Well, welcome back to Destination Aviation. I'm your host, Jeff Miller. You made it. You found us. Here we are, back for another amazing interview. Today, we're chatting with Jennifer Rykaczewski with Affordable Skies, and she has a good story getting into aviation. A great story about what she's doing now and how she's helping not just the average traveler, but pretty much all of aviation and that advocacy which we need. So we'll get right into the interview with Jennifer. Well, Jennifer, welcome to Destination Aviation.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me on.
No, this is fantastic. We talked briefly. I was actually en route. Oh, where was I going that time? I might have been going to Washington, D.C., I think, actually. We spoke briefly on the phone at Chicago O'Hare. Is that correct? The first
That
time I think we actually talked.
I believe you were heading to the NASAO conference.
I was. You
If
remember
I,
better than I do.
yes,
No, but you have such a critical mission, I think, in our industry and what you're trying to do. And obviously, there'll be a lot of show notes and people can read before they get on. And you even suggested this, which is a great way to go about it. Maybe just up front, you kind of describe your history, where you are now, but how you got there.
yeah. So to be clear, I didn't come from the aviation industry. My background is pretty eclectic. I started my first business in my early 20s. Ended up running everything from a skincare clinic to my dad's auto repair mechanical shop after he passed away. I've dipped my toes in retail. I've managed political campaigns. I even opened up a business consulting firm after graduating business from. Along the way, I married an Air Force pilot, which probably nudged me closer to the aviation world, I'd like to say.
That seems fair.
Yeah. He and I met through an interesting encounter. Actually, both had hired a matchmaker in Las Vegas, Nevada, out of all places.
Wow.
And we were paired up through that person. And I'll never forget meeting him. He goes by the name Drifter. That's his call sign.
Oh,
And
wow.
seeing military time on his watch. Actually, the first date, you're not supposed to talk about what your background is and what you do. You just more so about your hobbies. So I
I
said,
didn't know that.
yeah. Yeah, that's what the matchmaker said. Just talk about your
Okay.
hobbies. And so I noticed military time on his watch and I asked him, "Are you in the military?" And he goes, "Oh, how do you know?" And I said, Military time. Hello." And he said, "Yeah, I'm in the military." And I said, "Oh, that's great." After I got to know him after a few dates, I was very impressed by the guy, very unassuming personality type. He's a fighter pilot in the Air Force, but just a genuine good person. And he had said to me on the third date that he owned an airplane. And I thought to myself, who owns an airplane? Like, that's interesting. I
Right.
believed him, but I was thinking, was he talking about that A-10 jet that he flies in the Air Force? Or is it really like his airplane? I didn't ask too many questions.
That
So
seems
he
fair.
said, okay, yeah. So he said he would take me, flying if I so desire. And I said, absolutely. So on the fifth date, we met at the North Las Vegas airport and he took me in a Cessna 182, which is what he owned at the time.
Wow.
And apprehensive, maybe. I've never been in
Fair.
a small airplane before, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And in fact, after that, we flew all around the country together. In fact,
Really?
when we moved from Las Vegas to Washington, D.C., he
Yeah.
was fairly convinced that I would just fly commercially. But
Yeah.
no, I
Oh,
flew with him
you
in that
did.
Cessna. I did. And it was so amazing. That's where it started, I'd like to say. This was roughly 8 years ago.
There's so much in that I would like to ask. Do you still have the plane? You said when he owned it at the time. Do you have another plane now?
No, he's looking at getting a new one. He still has
Okay.
a few years left in the military
Okay.
with his commitment. But he ended up selling it while we were living in Southern Pines, North Carolina, after our second child was born, simply because he wasn't using it as much.
Yeah.
And he is looking at getting a new one soon.
Wow. It's so interesting to me. And I just, there's so much that I want to ask about that. But so just, I guess, when you're matchmaking like that, I didn't know it was a faux pas. You're not supposed to talk about your background.
Well, it was interesting that the
Yeah.
matchmaker was pretty strict in her rules, and
Really?
she preferred that we talked about like our hobbies, and she just didn't want like, whatever for whatever reason. Most people default to their careers,
Yeah.
and she said on the first date, just don't talk about your career, just talk about your hobbies. So see what you guys have in common. So
It's a cool thought. It's hard though in my mind thinking about it because to your point, you're so invested in your career to not.
100%.
Right, so you feel like I feel like I would be diverging all the time. Now, did you
Yeah.
know what time it was on his watch? Because even to this day, I'll admit, sometimes, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 2000 hour, yeah, it's 8 o'clock,
Yeah,
right?" Yeah.
yeah. No, I knew military time. Yeah, so I could tell, but like it just, I'm very observant. So I
Yeah.
notice things on people, and just noticing the military time, I'm like, this guy has to be in the military. But the rest is history. A year later, we got married, and it's been about close to 8 years now, and we've lived in 5 places in those
So Las
years.
Vegas to North Carolina to
No, actually, Las Vegas to DC for a year, and then
wow,
Southern
okay,
Pines, North Carolina. He was at Fort Bragg,
okay,
and then Tucson, Arizona, and then
okay,
back here to DC.
okay, back to DC. Now, is DC home for you? Is that your home area, or
I was actually born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada.
you
During
were?
during the good old days, I like to say in the
Okay,
80s and 90s, I like to
that's
say. I
fair.
like to add.
That seems fair.
Every
So
time I go back, I'm like, there's too much traffic. What's going on here?
so
What
kind
happened in
of
this town?
reminiscent.
Yeah.
It's I've had some friends, they work for, like, Allegiant Airlines and stuff, and they've lived in the Vegas area, but,
Yep.
I'll say you get off to the side, the outskirts and stuff, you're like, "Oh, it's like a normal town," a little I mean, as much as Vegas can probably be considered normal, but, churches and schools and people going about their daily lives once you're off the strip, but I would assume '80s, '90s is more reminiscent of Fremont Street, is that
Yeah,
where you
and the
spent
strip was really booming at the
is it
time. I
yeah,
mean,
okay.
I grew up on Sunrise Mountain, which is the east side of
Okay.
Las Vegas, and you
Yeah.
literally could see the entire valley. It was like Christmas
Wow.
every night. You could see the lights of the strip and the downtown, but we used to be able to drive from the base, the top of Sunrise Mountain, to the strip. Roughly, it took us about 15 to 18 minutes. Now I try to take that drive, and I'm like,
That's
what
right.
happened? It's just too many people. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
my perspective anyway.
no, I think you spot it. I lived in California for about 5 years, and everybody that was there that grew up '70s, '80s, '90s that had bought a home there sold it and moved to Nevada, and that was their nest egg, was their house. They worked for aviation, like in my role, like at an airport, and so that was their nest egg, and then they moved right in next to you and created all that traffic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those towns that you seem to gravitate towards, and whether your career or something, because so many conferences run through Las Vegas. But I've always thought I would never want to live there. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
it just probably isn't exactly what I would want out
yeah,
of life, but it is a beautiful state, and I could see, you probably have access to everything in the world, so there's that.
yeah.
Now, do you guys
Yeah,
think
true.
DC's home for you for at least the foreseeable future?
We're not sure where our home is actually.
Yeah,
We absolutely
that's
we
good though.
both yeah, we love Colorado.
Okay.
Kyle went to the Air Force Academy
Yeah.
there during his time in the early thousands, but no, yeah, we're not sure. We're not sure where
That's
we
good.
want to actually call our
Yeah.
home yet.
Well, you guys getting to mountain flying, you and the kids and everything like that. Have
Yeah,
fun, go up to
exactly.
Vail. Yeah. Wow. So anyway, so you were now you also mentioned something that was interesting to me. You ran an auto shop, did you say? Is that what you said?
So my dad was an auto electrical genius, I would like to say. Since at a young age, he could fix any car. He made his career out of that. Uh, had I would like to say the most successful auto repair shop in Las Vegas that Las Vegas has ever had. He had that business. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2008. At that time, I owned a business. I owned a skincare clinic. I was very passionate about skincare at the time, became an esthetician. My business had been open for about 2 years. I was experiencing great success and had just hired several estheticians to work with me and massage therapists. Then my dad passes away. That was a shock to our family. I was still in my early 20s when that happened. So I had to make a decision. My decision was made, and it was for me to close my business and move to Las Vegas to support my family. My sisters, they really needed my support, and which then led to me running my dad's auto repair shop. I was familiar with his shop because I had worked with him during summer, like 2 different summers when I was 17 and 18. And I saw how he ran his business. I'm little do you know about me. I know how to fix a few things in cars. I could change my oil. My
That's what I was
husband
getting
always
at.
laughs. Yeah, yeah. My husband's he saw me do it once. He's like, "Wow, you actually can do it." And I said, "Did you think I was making this up?" And he's like, "No." I said, "I worked for my dad. My dad, I could change the tires on the side of the road." I said, "You want me around, don't you?
I was
Yeah, I
gonna
can
say,
fix
yeah.
things."
You're the right person for a road trip is what it sounds
Like,
like. Are you the oldest
exactly.
sister?
I'm the second oldest.
You're the second oldest, okay, and so how long did you run it? You don't want me.
We kept the business open for a year and a half, but became very difficult to run because the business was known that my people knew my dad. My
Yeah,
dad was the business. He was a larger
sure.
than life personality type, and I kept it open because it was important for us to keep it going.
Yeah,
But long term, that wasn't something I was going to continue. So it was like, well, what am I going to do next? And
right.
yeah, so then I ended up getting involved in political campaigns, more so on the nonpartisan side.
Do you always have an interest in the political? Because it seems like such a segue into like
Hey,
the
major.
political. Right. Yeah.
I
Right.
don't know how these things keep happening to me. And so people see something in me. I think it was the
Yeah.
campaign manager I had met. And he's like, "You have a lot of talent." And I said, "In
Yeah.
what?" And he was like, "No, you know how to talk to people, and you're very creative. And have you ever thought about getting involved in politics, maybe even running for office?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. I don't want to run for office." He was like, "You would be good at that." And I'm like, "No, count me. Don't even count me in." He's a consultant. You don't know. He's trying to set me up for something.
Yes.
And long story short, he and I built a relationship, and I ended up working for him and then branching off and starting my own political consulting business. And I had a successful run for 9 years, actually. But again, it was just like sort of like these chance encounters sort of in my life that just drew me into different industries. Not necessarily by choice, but when I got into those industries, I would like to say I was good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So it's fascinating for sure.
So, with kind of that political spectrum, was that anybody that wanted your services, local, state,
Kind of.
federal? I mean, you, whoever, if there was somebody who's running for mayor or they're running for a federal representative, you could help them with their campaigns. Okay. And any state?
My primary focus was Nevada,
Okay. It was. Okay.
simply because the connections I had in Nevada.
Sure.
But I have worked with other campaigns as a consultant on the side in
Yeah.
various places.
No, that makes it. I had an interview, didn't get the job once, many years ago when Senator Harry Reid was still alive. And it used to be McCarran, right? In fact, when all the years you lived there. And I remember I had the interview and it was with the airport director and a bunch of them there. And I was like, so is it going to be called Harry Reid someday? And like, I will never be called that. You know how much money it would cost to change the name. And so all these years later, every time I fly, I'm like, well, I was at least right on that. I didn't get the job, but I was at least right that they would change the name at some point.
Yeah,
But such
yeah,
a history there with politics and the whole McCarran deal. And
yeah,
so kudos to you for getting involved with that. And so when
yeah.
you left Nevada, you left kind of that behind. You didn't do any political stuff once you left Nevada as far as assisting in campaigns and stuff. You were focused there when you lived there. You left and then switched again.
Well, while running political campaigns, which I want to add, in 2014, I ran 16 campaigns and won 14 of
Wow.
them. 14 campaigns we won. You can
Wow.
imagine I was running myself ragged. 5 a.m. I'm at a breakfast. 10 p.m. I'm at a social. In between, I'm speaking on behalf of candidates. Oh, which candidate? It's constant,
Yeah.
constant go, 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 as you can imagine.
Yeah.
It was a thrill. It was exciting. I was in my
Yeah.
early 30s, so I had a lot of energy during that time.
Well, you seem like you still have energy if
Yeah,
any
of
if
course.
any politicians are listening out there.
Yeah, yeah. What? No, I just after throughout that time and working in politics, I was working towards my MBA degree. So I was at school at Texas A&M Commerce.
Okay.
They had this hybrid program, which was quite unique. I was able to do the program from Las Vegas, take exams on campus. So I flew to Dallas, the Dallas area often. I had a cousin that lived there. So it was convenient for me to stay with her. So throughout that time, as you can imagine, working in campaigns, getting an MBA degree, I was just so busy, but achieved that. I got an MBA, finished schooling. And then ironically enough, a couple years later, I met Kyle. And throughout that time, I opened my own business called JC Barrier Group and was that's attached to, political campaign management, business consulting. I knew I wanted to get more on into business. I actually chose business school over law school. It was either those two choices. Simply after polling my family and asking them the question, should I go to law school or business school? And it was unanimous. It was business school.
Now, would Texas A&M been the choice for either major, or would you have shifted from Texas A&M?
I wasn't quite sure,
Okay.
I looked at UNLV and,
Okay.
being the hometown school, it just
Yeah.
wasn't going to work for my schedule for me
Yeah.
to go and go to school on campus. So,
I was going to ask you in that time frame, and I'm glad you mentioned Kyle because I was going to refer to him as Drifter.
oh, okay.
Right. Well, because
Yeah.
that's the only name I knew up till you mentioned Kyle. But I
You
was
could say,
wondering,
let's go with Drifter. Let's
Drifter,
go with that.
that's
Yeah.
it's a good name.
Yeah.
But so by the time you were going to Texas A&M and stuff, you were still living in Nevada, but you had met your husband at that point.
No, I met him after I
You met him
graduated,
after.
about a year
Okay.
after.
A year after. Okay. And then so when you graduated from there, and just so I get it right in my own head, then you left Nevada and you were still working on political campaigns. I know you said, was it
Yes.
2014 you had 15 or 16 campaigns?
16.
2014 and 16. Wow. That is insane. Now, did you have a cap on how many you would take on? If you're like, hey, listen, I got the energy. I'll do as much as I can.
But that was sort of the cap. I mean,
Okay. I was gonna say,
16 was a
it
lot.
seems like a lot.
I
Were you
just,
a team
I
of were you a team of
yeah,
one?
a team of 4.
Team of 4. Okay.
But that still was a lot. To,
Yeah.
is to try to be in all those places. You can't be in
Yeah.
all those places at once, and gaining exposure, and just like you have these candidates and these and
Yeah.
monitoring the candidates and tracking them was one thing, and making sure they get to the right place at the right time is another
Yes.
thing,
Yes.
right?
That's half the battle
So
right there.
yeah, then making sure we cover places that they are not at. Just
Yes.
it was an interesting endeavor.
In my day role, I spend a lot of time working with our legislators across the whole spectrum, wherever they may sit in life. And, often you get to meet a nice person like yourself who's representing them and says, well, they wish they could be here, but we're here. But quite honestly, a lot of times, someone like you in that role, you can get so much more further because you're like, okay, I need the details. Tell me what you need. What are you looking to do? And so I always enjoy getting an opportunity to discuss people around the legislator as well, because usually they can help you kind of champion what you're trying to do. So kudos to you
Yeah,
for stepping into that
yeah,
role.
yeah, yeah.
So now you find yourself in Washington, D.C. You've graduated, you're married, you're still in the political world, or when did you start to make the next shift?
Well, so I was kind of making a shift, and I
Okay.
reached out to connections of mine and let them know that, I'm on the market. If you know of any projects, any business related projects that would be a good fit for me, please let me know. And I have a good network of people that have seen me in action and believe in me, and they've kept me afloat over the years, and I'm very grateful for that. I have been employed the entire time since being married, and by the way, shout out to all the military spouses, because it is not easy to keep moving, uprooting your life, especially when you have children. We have
Yeah.
2 kids, and when they're in school is another thing. You're responsible for making sure they get a proper education and experiences along the way too. And we do it all. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. No, thank you so much to you and him for his service and your service as well. Because like you said, I mean, it seems, especially in aviation, right? Especially the military life, it's so interconnected. And so myself, I have not been in the military, but I've been around a lot of people in our industry that have served or their spouses of people that serve. And it's to your point. I mean, you see it and you're like, how the heck do you get it all done? And
It's a
make
lot.
sure, yeah. But, kudos to both of you because I haven't met your 2 boys, is that correct?
I have a daughter that's 6 and a son
Okay,
that's 5,
okay.
14 months apart.
Now, you probably don't know at this point, but maybe the aviation bug, maybe they'll catch it.
Well, yeah, it's possible. I mean, yeah, no, it's quite possible for sure.
Or they could potentially, open up a auto repair store, or they potentially could, run a campaign or run for office
Of
themselves.
course.
You got a
Yeah.
whole list of things, eclectic, like you said there, but
Yeah.
okay, so you're in DC and you're staying gainfully employed through
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
process, which again, to the networks, right? The networks are so people ask me all the time, they're like when they go to a conference or something. I'm like, quite honestly, I was like, especially early on, there's a lot of sessions you're going to go to and you're going to get a lot of good information and that stuff's always really good. But the networking and having that network and, realizing that at some point you're going to need to ask somebody's help. That's just life, It's such an amazing part of this. Our industry's close and tight and you get to kind of know everybody, but it is when you run through those, I've been at points in my life where I haven't had a job and I had to lean on that network to be like, "Hey, I'm available." Now, you were always employed, so you didn't necessarily have to go that route, but network is such a good point to that. And we do have a lot of people that listen to the podcast that are younger. So I always try to emphasize grow your
Yeah.
network.
Exactly. And I actually help with mentorship. I mentor a few students currently
I love that.
in business. And my
Yeah.
advice to them is always do what you say you're going to do every
Yeah.
single time.
Yeah.
Every single time. Your track record matters.
Yeah.
And I'm that type of person. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it.
Yeah.
I
I
do it
100% agree.
no matter what I have to go through. I do
Right.
it.
No, it's such it sounds simplistic, but it's really not. And you see as you go through life, you're like, you start to scratch your head sometimes because you'll see people out there and you're like, even if you can't, if something you hit a wall and you can't commit completely to what you said, at least explain it. And that to me sometimes is I especially in the professional life when someone promises to do something and whether they're a no show or and you're just like, huh, okay, like I mean, I get stuff happens, but you know, to set yourself up for success in life, I mean, being there committed to exactly what you said to what you said you were going to do, or at least explaining why you can't do it, goes so far, so far. And it's such a simple thing to if you can allow yourself to have that ability to just step into a room and say, "Hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do, but if I'm not going to do it, I'll at least explain it." And also, too, not sugarcoating things, right? I find so often that maybe something didn't get done, and people give you every excuse under the sun of why it didn't get done. But what I find so endearing is, "Hey, I just ran out of time," or whatever it might be. So you're mentoring. So I'm assuming you're mentoring people at back. Is it Texas A&M? Is that correct?
They're not at Texas A&M. They're
They're
at
not.
other universities, but
Okay.
yeah, we've gotten connected through various people that we have mutual friends with, and one's a friend of mine's son who's wanting to go to business school, so I'm mentoring him
Okay.
about that. And another is a lady that she's in her early 30s, and she found me on LinkedIn,
Oh,
and
wow.
she says, I've been watching sort of what you've been building, and it's quite eclectic, and I'm interested in all these things you do. And would you be a mentor to me? And there's some power in mentorship for sure.
Yeah, I never, people reach out all the time, and sometimes it's, probably, their initial intentions is not what they want. They want to, whatever, sell you something. It's not really a mentoring thing, but there is a good amount of people that reach out that, just, hey, I want to get into how did you get to where you're at? And this is what I want to do. And, I always say, especially in our industry, I think we have unintended barriers, especially in an airport
Yeah.
like I work at. People drive by it a non-commercial airport and they don't necessarily understand what it is and what we do. And so if I can break that down a little bit and at some point everybody was menteed, right? I had mentors whether they were official or not. They were people in your life that were early in the industry or early wherever you wanted to go that helped you along the way, whatever that might be. And
For
even some
sure.
of the more simplest things like following through. I worked at a golf course when I was a teenager and, you just learn a lot of kind of respect from the people that are coming through. Well, probably some of them own planes. Golf and planes sometimes go hand in hand, but, necessarily not this direct connection of aviation to golf, but you learn time management, you learn dealing with personalities. And so, and even to this day, I'd say I'm a mentee. I don't know, this official mentor probably I don't necessarily have, but there's people I definitely look up to and think, I wonder what they would do. So
Yeah,
that's
for
great.
sure.
And so you're now in your role, so you're doing the mentoring. I just want to make sure that I connect it completely. When you kind of stopped your political side to this, when you were running campaigns or at least assisting campaigns, was that the next step then to what you're doing now with Affordable Skies?
I guess you can say it was kind of like there was a transition period
Okay.
where I was ghostwriting a book and then editing a memoir, and actually an opportunity came along the way with an industry leader, an aviation leader, on a special project. This was while we were living in Tucson, Arizona, and this really opened my eyes to the whole world of commercial aviation. Yeah, through this project, I was taken through a 40-year journey and got to learn the business through an insider's view, which was quite fascinating. One thing I learned was that, wow, how are travelers being represented in all of this? Like, there's industry perspective, there's policy perspective, and conversations around that. Why are travelers being represented? It was the question that I had. And so, as bold as it may seem, I conducted market research. That's in my wheelhouse. Yeah, there was a we identified the critical gap in advocacy, but the question was, would this be successful? We don't know unless we give it a go. This is a concept. In the beginning, Affordable Skies was only a concept, right? You have to give it a go to know. So we did. We launched Affordable Skies. And by the way, I do want to go back and mention how we came up with that name, because it's not because we think airfare is unaffordable. Affordable Skies came to be after we did beta testing on a group of individuals, which are travelers, and we asked them lots of questions, what's important to them. And number one across the board was price. Price is important to them. Not that cost of travel is out of reach currently, but it may become out of reach to them to be able to travel, to experience life. So we're like, okay, Affordable Skies. That makes sense. I mean, number 2 was safety. Number 3 was comfort. We could have been Comfort Skies, but hey, no. Affordable Skies made the most sense for us, that we're going to watch affordability because that's a true concern that travelers have. So yeah, so we did a lot of work, research regarding this name before we even brought it to life and launched the organization. I do want to mention, Jeff, 15 months ago, we launched Affordable Skies today. 15 months ago today.
Congratulations.
So
I did not know
to be on here.
It was the anniversary. And look, St. Patrick's Day and you're wearing green. So many.
I had to.
I did it, but you can't pinch me remotely. So, well, what are you going to do?
Exactly. You had to wear the green, especially when you have kids, right? They wake up and
they'll pinch. They
know
will
it's,
pinch.
Yeah.
I have a niece and she definitely is a pincher, even when it's not St. Patrick's Day. So I made the faux pas when we first spoke about Affordable Skies, because as I was thinking about it in my head, I'm thinking, is it, ultra low cost carriers? And then you articulated it in such a way of what you just did, of what it actually is. And it's funny because right before I got on here and you hear, A4A and them talk about price sensitivity, and I forget his first name now, but he was Governor Sununu, who's now the CEO.
Chris.
Yes, Chris. And talking about how, and the airlines always, they do like to say, if you look over time and over decades, the price has decreased and we're behind where, just the consumer price indexing and the CPI would be for normal goods and services. But when we all fly, right, you can see how things have evolved, right? When I was young, probably around the same time you were living it up in Las Vegas. But you could get a free bag, right, with a standard ticket. And then things did come around. I mentioned some friends that I've had work for the Allegiant and stuff. But with your mission, and so people that listen to this podcast, right, there's a lot of people that listen that are in our industry, which I'll say I didn't completely understand it. So I love that you're here to explain it, because I think your mission it requires, I think, for someone like me to be like, you hear so much happening and noise in our industry that when it makes you stop and say, that's a good idea. Yeah, people should be looking into that to ensure that, it's still accessible for everybody to fly. And, I loved our first conversation. We mentioned it when you remembered it better than I did with Niseo, but when you talked about things like affordability within the terminals and stuff like that. So could you elaborate a little bit on your mission and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so our tagline is that we're strengthening the role of traveler voices in the future of aviation. So when you mention A4A, and we absolutely agree with their data. They got it right on, they're right on track with that. But so those facts matter, but so do travelers' stories. Travelers are saying that prices are becoming out of reach. Let's listen to them. Let's listen to what they're the ones paying for all this.
Yeah.
Let's listen to what they have to say. And we have been doing just that at Affordable Skies. We are listening to what the travelers have to say. They're providing us feedback on aviation issues. In fact, last Saturday, we put out a poll where we were showcasing 2 proposed pieces of legislation. And just yesterday, a traveler reached out to us and thanked us for telling him about these pieces of legislation he had no clue about. He says, how would I know this even existed if it weren't for Affordable Skies providing the education to us?
Yeah.
So again, you could see that gap, right? That gap existed, right. And now we're filling that gap, and it's important.
When you look at a ticket price like that, and this is going to be a Jeff Miller assumption, but I just assumed when they talk about ticket prices and where, we've compared to other inflation items, I always assume that they're referring to the basic ticket price, which I guess goes back to my thought where that has evolved and changed a lot over the decades, where, you may get a lower price on the ticket, but you don't get a seat anymore. And if you're on a certain airline, you may not get, a carry-on. You're definitely not getting a check bag. And so do you know when they talk about those statistics, is it purely the basic price to get on the plane? Like if you're flying on a Spirit or Allegiant or even a legacy carrier where it's a basic fare, is that when they pull their data? I just assume they always pull their data off the lowest fare that they offer, regardless of whether you're basically flying in your underwear at that
Yeah.
price point.
Well, I'm not in their data center, but I do
Okay.
agree with you. I believe that
Yeah.
that's the data they're pulling.
I mean, if
But
I were in their shoes, that's the
yeah,
data I would probably
yeah,
pull.
that's what I believe they're pulling. And but
Yeah.
these travelers, they want the freedom to fly. They also want the
Yeah.
freedom to choose how they want to fly.
Right.
Where the issues that we see is that confusion around the industry, those misunderstandings that we want to change, so that
Yeah.
when travelers walk through the airport, there are less of that.
Yeah.
So
No, so when you look at the industry right now and you see, the consolidation that's been happening, in my local area here, there's a big kind of fight happening right now between United and American for gate space at O'Hare. And probably the reality is they both have a large market share there. And Spirit Airlines, to their bankruptcy, I think that they sold two of their gates at O'Hare for $35 million. So you could argue probably less competition, especially from a carrier that has a different price model, right? Your Frontier, your Spirit, your Allegiance of the world. But does any of that come to concern with you when you see consolidation of, we're even at this point, I may be off, you probably would know better than me, but I think that four top airlines, so Southwest, American, United, and Delta account for something like 83%
yeah.
of the load capacity domestically in the United States. Is that certain areas you're keeping an eye on? And do you have like kind of opinions around the consolidation of the airlines?
Yeah, so we do keep an eye on that. We're about increasing competition because when you even in business school, like the more competition you have, the better the rates there's going to be because now, airlines have to compete against each other. So we'd love to see competition out there. Otherwise, if there's only just one or two or three or four players in the field, what does that mean for the traveler? The traveler's going to have to pay a higher price.
Yeah.
Historically, that's just what happens in business economics. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So it's, competition is good. We love competition. We want to see that. We want to see a thriving aviation industry with competition. We think that's a good idea.
So for, let's say, the people that are in aviation that listen, affordable skies for them, engaging with you on that kind of level, if you're a traveler, what would for them, is it, because I see things in our state that come through and like right now there's legislation and some of it's has more teeth to it, some of it doesn't. I'll speak to one that doesn't have probably a lot of teeth, but there's a representative in Illinois that has an introduced bill about having certain parameters for seat sizes and to make it uniformed. And really the idea, they've already written this in there, is they know at a state level they can't control that. That's not their
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
Do you flag? I mean, you mentioned the person earlier that reached out to you about legislation and said, thank you for putting it on my radar. Is that the kind of you said you're a year into it. Is the goal to make the average passenger more aware of legislation that's either in place now or that's coming that could affect travel on top of keeping an eye on affordability? Or what's the average traveler saying, I need to go to Affordable Skies, and what kind of product are they gonna get, at least right now?
So travelers are excited about just our engagement, that human interaction connection with that we're having with them. And we have a strong return on just open rates of our emails, like our click rates. It's just incredible to see. We have an 80+ percent return on that. So we're seeing that consumers are engaged in our materials. They are enjoying reading it. They're opening it. It's intriguing to them. But they want to see more education around aviation issues and policies that they never hear about. So that again, it alleviates any misunderstandings at the airport. Those two pieces of legislation I mentioned earlier that we had put out, I didn't mention them yet, but I mentioned on Saturday we put out an email, a poll. One was on the Traveler Privacy Protection Act of 2025. And this is a bipartisan bill, which is exciting to see. And this bill establishes rules around the use of facial recognition and other biometric technology at airport security, including requiring traveler consent and allowing travelers to opt out. There are some travelers that don't want their picture taken. They don't know where their data is going. They want to opt out. So that's what this is about. And travelers had no clue there was not going to be an option to opt out. They don't want to do. There's some travelers that just don't want to be involved in that. Okay, and then so
Go
that's
ahead.
interesting.
Yeah.
The next one is the Airfare Act. This act focuses on improving the airport experience for families and travelers that need assistance by allowing parents or caregivers accompanying someone to the gate, such as a minor or traveler needing help, to use their TSA PreCheck when assisting that traveler. So they have TSA PreCheck, let them use it. They have, their grandmother or mother taking them to the gate, let them use it. So that's what that helps out with. So again, two pieces of legislation that our base had no idea even existed. I mean, awareness was low.
Right. No, I'm in this industry and those bills are long and usually they're tucked into something else. And even when you start getting into it, and if you're well versed in it, you're like, I think that's what they mean. I'm gonna have to go back and double check this. And I'm, dealing with it right now in Illinois on aviation fuel taxes, and there was good intention by lawmakers, but the reality is a word here, a word there. In that case, a word from grant to allocation makes the process much more difficult to process funds that come from aviation fuel taxes because it's treated like a grant versus an allocation. And so, do you envision then Affordable Skies being an advocacy group for the consumer and you would push maybe in the future, maybe you're now, you can correct me here, for legislation for the average traveler that predominantly flying commercially? Is that the
Yeah.
predominant focus right now? Not like the general aviation side and that type of access issue, but if you're a consumer flying on a 121 scheduled airline, is that kind of the thought? Is that where it's going? You tell me I'm completely wrong. I'm
You're right
open to
on.
any of it.
You are absolutely on track. We provide research, education, and advocacy. Now, we became a C4 so that we can have that political arm when we need to use it. We
Okay.
don't want to just be a mouthpiece. Hey,
Right.
consumers are saying this and that. If it's going to affect travelers, we need to be able to stand up, go to these politicians and say, hey, here's the data and here are the stories from travelers, and weigh that into your decision making here. Please weigh that in.
Yeah.
So we are of resource to government and to the industry now. And I had mentioned to another industry leader, I said, we're not here to throw mud at anyone's face. Like, we're here to assist. We're here to help the industry, to help policymakers better understand, better understand travelers through their scope, through their lens.
How do you view things like, and again, this is probably something you're going to be more well versed on, but I'll touch on it and you can tell me if there's holes in this. But from what I understand, under the Biden administration, when Pete Buttigieg was Department of Transportation Secretary, they had the passenger Bill of Rights, where they think that they basically kind of beefed up, right? Certain things of issuing a refund quicker. I believe some of that has been rolled back, if not okay. And at, I believe, mostly the request of A4A is that, do you find that you would be at odds with some of that? Or like you just said, I know it's the idea is not to throw mud in anyone's face. And I think that's a great thought process and ideology to have when you're getting in this industry, because it's a closed community. You could understand some of it with A4A, and then others I could see where, especially to the end user, the consumer of flying, do you find that you're advocating like in that role? Or you're like, yeah, you know what? There probably was an overreach there. I mean, if you look at deregulation in 1978, a lot of people say, the government having too much of a hand in telling the airlines where to go and what routes to serve. Do you have opinions on that yet? Are you still formulating as you work with your base?
Yeah, so A4A supports their stakeholders. We support the travelers. The travelers sit on those aircrafts, on those airplanes that the stakeholders are part of that run. Okay. We're an ally to A4A. We support what they do. We're going to have our opinions on what travelers have to say, and we report to the traveler. That's what we do. We're an independent board. We're not owned or operated by anyone. We are absolutely collect raw data from the traveler. We build relationships with the traveler to better understand their perspective as a whole. And then we're going to push their information forward. and some of it may be favorable, some unfavorable, but as long as it's majority and it makes sense, at least put it to the table, set it on the table so that stakeholders can see what's important or what's a concern to travelers. Don't you think that's important to set it there and like let them at least look at it? And we're hoping
I
to
think
present
everybody, yeah.
information. Exactly. And that's what we're doing. We're dealing directly with those that pay for these tickets, that sit on those aircrafts and fly commercially to their destinations. And we are here to work with A4A. We're here to work with anyone in the industry, rather, but we are going to support the travelers because that's important, but we're not skewed. We're not going to take one position or the other. We're going to say, this is the data on the travelers. This is what they're saying about this issue. Let's talk about this. How can we make this better for travelers?
Yeah. So the average person who flies, so Jeff Miller who flies, and I get on a flight out of O'Hare, which predominantly, right, if let's say you're like in the Chicago market, right, you're probably going to be United or American, or you're going to go down to Midway and you're going to be Southwest. But the average flyer, they can go to the Affordable Skies website and engage can they sign up to be a member? Or what's for the average person with Affordable Skies? Is it the newsletter they get, or they actually have a profile with Affordable Skies?
No, they have a profile too. They
They
can
do.
log into our site. Yeah. So there's a free membership. We have a $25 a year membership for them wanting to support, because there are folks that just want to give, support, lend support. It takes dollars for us to continue our marketing, and continue this
Absolutely.
operations. Yes. And then we have a $150 leadership circle. That's those like several industry folks have gone on there and supported us that way. But what's really important here, Jeff, is really and now that we're in year 2, is like to start like aligning ourselves with partners. So those on the sidelines that have seen our value, step up and support us, because you know what? There's tremendous value in what we're doing here at Affordable Skies. Have you seen our advisory council? Have you seen our board? Have you seen we have almost 8,000 members? Like there's tremendous support already. And there's tremendous opportunities down the road for this organization.
So that's a good segue probably from, you have the user, right? The person that's buying the ticket, that's flying, that wants to, I mean, the reality is, right, when you're in the system is just using it, you're like, well, who's really looking out for me? And you probably have somewhat of a jaded view that nobody's really looking out for me as a consumer, right? Maybe not everybody, but I've done this for 25 years now. And when things go wrong, usually if you're on the airport side and somebody's looking for someone to talk about whatever the issue is, they're like, usually the common theme is nobody has my back in this. So the partners you mentioned, so a lot of our listeners are either airports or they're advocacy groups, which I know you and I have talked about, that you've talked to before, like your NBAAs of the world, or your NADAs of the world, or your AOPAs of the world, or your AAAs, whichever acronym you want to throw at it. Who are you targeting? You talk about the 8,000 members. Who are you targeting to be, okay, who's on the sideline right now? Maybe not specific. I don't want to put you on the spot, but could you talk about, let's say it's an airport listening. Do you encourage them to be a member of Affordable Skies?
100%.
Okay.
100%. We're all part of this ecosystem together. We're consumer facing, airports, industry facing. Why not?
Yeah.
We can just the exchange of information, of data would be very helpful to airports.
So if you're an airport listening to this, by them becoming a member with Affordable Skies, they would have access to data points that you have?
Yes, they would have access to data points. And if they become a sponsor of Affordable Skies, they would have a seat on our advisory council and also be involved in meetings, quarterly meetings, to showcase our progress that we're making and what's ahead into the years. We have a 5-year plan currently, so they would be purview of that plan as well and help us set any alignment or direction or give any feedback as well. I'm very open to feedback. I'm one of those personality types. I don't know everything. I'm not going to claim to. Nobody does. And
No.
I always, even in my newsletter, if you read my newsletters, always at the end, I say, I welcome anyone's feedback. And by the way, I get it. I get people giving me feedback and I appreciate that. Whether it's constructive feedback, nice feedback, all feedback's good to me.
Yeah.
But just getting involved and being part of what we're doing. I mean, this is transformational, and I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep going at this. I wasn't sure in the beginning until I realized this wasn't a concept anymore, and I threw that out the window. And then I said, I'm invested. I'm invested in making this work. I want to see how this can really change the landscape for in positive ways. Okay, change it positively.
I know you, and if you correct me here on this, because I mentioned it earlier, maybe it got a little lost in the weeds. I want to make sure it's right. You're predominantly focusing on commercial, your Southwest United, Delta, all those type of travelers currently, right? You're not as much focusing on Drifter and Jennifer and the 182 going into Naples just yet. Is that fair to say?
I mean,
Or
we have some pilots that, just fly private that are members of
yeah,
ours, and they love to see the progress we're making. And they, one pilot in particular, engages in our materials, and I appreciate that. And but no, I mean, anyone can be a member. But our main focus is honed in on commercial aviation because think about it, millions of people rely on air travel, commercial air travel every year. But travelers haven't had any part in any discussions until
right.
now.
Well, and the reason why I ask is because we do have a lot of listeners that fall into that category as well. Just like yourself and your husband who fly either recreationally or you're doing it for business, but there's a lot of conversation around affordable access in that side of the world too, right? You see airports and maybe bad actors in different realms of this
Yeah.
that are trying to, have exorbitant fees to keep aircraft out for maybe whatever reason that would be noise or whatever, though the local community is saying, yeah, let's try to limit the airport. But if you're not there completely, and I love that you said anybody can join, but I do think there's an opportunity there as well because there is so many people in that side of the world that are focused on affordability. And you talked about mentoring earlier on and you talk about students and people want to get into this. One of the biggest barriers is just costs, right? Costs associated. And you see some airports that talk about landing fees and you start talking about reducing training and giving people the access, affordability to continue on with that because tomorrow they'll be flying your United flight out of O'Hare. So just at least a thought if you're not there completely, but it sounds like you are. And at least I'm glad that people can be members on that side because there is a good amount
Yeah.
of people that listen to this podcast that, of course, everybody that flies recreationally also flies commercially. So we all sit in that bucket. But it is an affordable issue that, probably as you continue to grow and expand the horizons of affordable skies, it all ties probably nicely together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we'd be happy to take a look at that. And again, as we continue to build our base, the
Yeah.
stronger base we have, the more power we have to really stand up and make an impact, a positive impact in this space. So we would love to work with those recreationally and be able to take a stand for them on the affordability issues as well.
How do you feel about the industry overall right now? And you see certain things like somewhat of the hostile takeover of the board at Southwest, and some of those things that really the brand carried the airline for so long, and Southwest is such a key of that. Where the open seating. I mean, once you got used to it, I was never really a Southwest flyer because where I grew up, Southwest wasn't a predominant player. But once you get to know, okay, A, B, C, A, I'm good, B, I'm all right, C, I'm going to be in the center. C stands for center. But all that's gone now. And, the bags fly for free. That's gone now. And, we've always said if you're in this industry, Southwest has looked more like a legacy carrier than, a low cost carrier for decades now. But overall, that or just the industry, how do you think we're doing? Do you feel like there's a lot of warning signs? You think we're already in the middle of something we need to course correct? What's your feeling?
I think when going back to Southwest, so we get a large amount of travelers that reach out to us about that, and a lot of it's the question why? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why can't they just go back to how it was? Why are they charging for bags now? Why? A lot of whys. It's confusing now because there's a major shift that happened, right? Like historically they were in one way, and now boom, you flip the plane around, you're another way. But just providing them with the resources for them to better understand why those decisions were being made or have been made. And some of this is just business, and travelers need to know that as well. Like, these airlines operate on thin margins, and we're pushing that information out there too for them to better understand and appreciate the industry. But no, it's just really our take on all this is that it goes back to the traveler, the one pulling out those dollar bills, which, we don't really keep those in our pockets anymore. What's a plastic card maybe? So we pull out the credit card. We're the ones paying for everything, right?
All
Like
right.
we have to pay to go places, pay to play, and but let's give these travelers more of an opportunity to weigh in on what's going on because you know what? when you're blindsided by your traveler, you're going down the wrong way. You're going down
Yeah.
the wrong path if you can't see any longer. And we're hoping to show something a bit different by engaging with travelers. And we have a lot of data. Actually, I was showing my VP the data that we have, and he's like, this is gold. This is very important. That's going to help the industry out. And I said, absolutely it is. And we're keeping all this, and we're continuing to, touch base with our travelers because that's important. So anyway, as a whole, it's really about just engagement with travelers so that we can make this industry much, much better.
I will say Jeff Miller still carries a couple dollars in his pockets in case I find myself over on Fremont Street there with some in the penny slot. But, and this episode is probably going to come out in about a 2-week period from when we're recording right now. And as of recording, as of today, TSA, as I came into the office this morning, 3-hour lines at Atlanta. Hopefully, maybe when this is out, it's corrected. Are you engaged with that as well? Because obviously that's such a big factor, not only to TSA employees. I mean, most TSA employees, I just read this the other day, the median salary of a TSA employee is $35,000 a year. And so when you start talking about legislators, and you listen, it's not really a political thing, I don't get into that, but just getting them paid and the end result, there's such a forward facing these people you're interacting with. And I've seen so many, probably your users, doing such amazing good things, doing the food banks, giving out the gift cards. But are you active in that space to get TSA funded and back up and
Yeah.
running?
Oh, we are. I mean, we put out an official statement about this to also inform the travelers about what's going on. I mean, it's a total slap in the TSA agent's face. I mean, first it was, you mentioned the air traffic controllers FAA. Now you slap there's a slap there. Now a slap with TSA. Come on. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
These politicians need to come to an agreement. Like this is just outrageous. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's hard when you travel because it's like it's this unknown, right? How many are going to call off sick today? I think as of last count, 300 have left the job, and I think when people start to realize if your average salary is $35,000 a year, people aren't going to hang around too long. I have, siblings that are air traffic controllers, and when they go through it, right, it's hard to go to the bank and say, hey, here's a promise note. I'll pay my mortgage. I promise.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with those type of margins and people are going to say, hey, you know what? I'm out. If I can't make a living here, I'm out.
And then from a traveler from a traveler's perspective, their mindset is different. They purchased their plane ticket. They're getting on the plane. Now, what is going on? These consequences now have happened. Unintended, I guess, intended maybe. Consequences now you get to TSA and you're like, what's happening here? Why are the lines long? I'm having to wait 3 hours. I bought my ticket. I need to get on the airplane to go see family. What's going on here? So the traveler has no clue sometimes. They're blindsided again by this sort of experience. And that experience leads to more misunderstandings, them not quite understanding what just happened here. The average traveler doesn't know that TSA is not being paid. They don't
Right.
because we've put out materials
Absolutely.
and like travelers have reached back out to us. How can we help? How can we help? How can we get them paid? And I said, well, we have to tell Congress to stand up and do the right thing. Come on, we can't keep the aviation system thriving if you don't pay these individuals to work. It's never,
No,
yeah.
I love the edification process that you're doing because, as someone who's been in this orbit for so long, there's so many silos, right? Like when you're at an airport, right? You have, and sometimes you even have these quirky things where TSA is hired by the airport because they have a local agreement where they're not federal employees like San Francisco. But generally speaking, they're federal employees. But then it just, and the reality is, and I talk to people all the time that generally it's a complaint, very seldom in life does somebody call the airport to say, hey, you're doing a great job. I get it. I'd say that to people here. I'm like, I live in a community. How often am I down talking to my elected officials? Pretty much zero. I'm pretty much never down there talking to them
Yeah.
because things are working well. And, you very seldom are like, let me go say, hey, things are going great. But when things aren't going great, then it's like, who can I talk to? And people get a little more frustrated because they'll talk to the airport. And when you talk to the airport, you say, well, I work for the county, or I work for the city, or I work for an authority. ESA is a federal entity, but they're not, they're under a different branch than the FAA. And so someone like you in there connecting all that, because why would
Yeah.
the average person know it?
Yeah, and imagine the morale within TSA. I mean, those that are showing up to work, I mean, they know they're not being paid, and how is that affecting now the traveler's experience? That can affect the traveler's experience. The person that travels and they're like, "Why is this person acting this way towards me?" And we don't know what that could mean, but we know that travelers
Yeah.
like see the agents. And again, they may or may not know if they're getting paid or not based on what education that they've been given or what they have seen out there on the internet. But we are constantly putting information out there to let our members know that TSA is currently not being funded. These employees are not being paid, and to please have that understanding.
So would you see kind of your role in the advocacy part providing the end user, because you get enough people talking to their elected officials the same talking points, and I forget who it is now. It was a senator, I believe, maybe a representative, or maybe a coalition of both. But basically, there's this idea or this bill out there right now about not ever doing this again. And that the continuing resolutions and everything that we run into with the debt ceiling every year now, basically legislation that would fund the aviation system through the aviation user fees that are attached to it until they get, funding out the door. So would Affordable Skies kind of look at that spectrum and say, okay, this looks like good legislation and we should engage with our 8,000 members?
So we haven't at all asked any of our members to engage their elected officials on any piece of legislation. However, it's possible in the future. If there's a piece of legislation that's going to affect a majority of the demographic, we will ask them to reach out to their elected officials, but we have not had to do that. But we do put out information to inform them about the space and what's
Yeah,
going
because
on.
I mean, I could really see that's where the power of your group could come from. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, I think they're the largest association in aviation. They're around 380 something thousand members, pilot members. But typically, like with the PAPA legislation they just had out about no landing fees, which again could fit with your mission because it's about affordability, right? And, they'll go to their members and say, hey, here's your talking points, talk to your legislator, which I would imagine at some point is probably you building this immense footprint of, hey, there's an issue, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you see things in Europe, and I don't think anybody's done it yet, but I think Ryanair has been talking about the not really a seat, but kind of a lean in seat. um,
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. No, I mean just considering our strong engagement in our surveys and that,
yeah.
our members are engaged and plugged in and wanting to learn more and wanting to support us. Yes. Moving forward, if there's any legislation that's going to affect travelers, we will ask them to engage their
Yeah.
Congress members or elected officials for sure. Yes, we do. We do. That's on our radar.
Yeah. Are you, and again, you may, it's interesting when I look at kind of the political spectrum, and you really do get a civics lesson in this industry, kind of understanding how things work. Um, are you or other people on your team that are lobbyists, or do you envision that you're officially lobbying for Affordable Skies?
So none of us are lobbyists. I when we built this organization, it's a triangle build. So the base is the traveler, the middle aspect is the industry, engagement with the industry. That's very important to us, and the top is government. So again, us being a C4, we do have a political arm to us so that we can advocate on behalf of our travelers, but we are not lobbyists.
So, anything that is burning right now for you, for the listeners, besides getting involved with your group, which make sure to put your website in the show notes, but beyond that, is there anything that the average person should be focused on right now besides the other stuff we've already mentioned?
Yeah, get engaged, get plugged in with what we're doing. We're constantly putting out information. By popular demand, we are hosting a virtual social on April 22nd, yes, 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Anybody can join?
Anyone can join us on our website, affordableskies.org. There's an events tab. You can sign up for that. We have a large amount of folks that have already signed up, and each person that signs up is going to be entered into receiving a raffle and receiving a $150 gift card to an airline of their choice. So just by signing up, you get put in this raffle.
Oh, that's
It's a
great.
good idea. But yeah, just more of that engagement. You can see how we're really working hard to engage these travelers. They want this.
Yeah.
So we're delivering exactly what they want.
What was that date again?
April 22nd,
April
7 p.m.
22nd.
Eastern time.
Wow. So
And we're,
give
we're
somebody.
likely going to have some breakout rooms. I mean, considering the size already and those wanting to attend.
I
Yeah.
could imagine. Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and I think everybody will get geared up to go travel. I love that. That's the giveaway. Some summer travel for someone.
Yeah. And for all of your members that really appreciate what we're doing and seeing the value in our research and our education and the potential for further advocacy, please do connect with us, whether it's the free membership or the paid memberships. If you're interested in a sponsorship as well, we're open to that. We really want to continue to grow, and we're supercharged and ambitious, and all of us are. My board is, the advisory council, all the members. So let's see where this goes.
Yeah,
That's
no,
that's my mindset.
I love it. You know, and again, I think it's one of those things that is you ask anybody in this industry, like when you and I first talked about it, it's like a no-brainer, right? It's like, oh yeah, no, that is needed, but I love that you're taking it on to actually go do it because I often am critical on our own industry because I do think all of the alphabet soup that I mentioned earlier, everybody has their component to focus on. And every one of them would say the end user is a component of it, but I do think it gets lost along the way somewhere. So it is nice that someone's there trying to connect it all for the end user. Because as someone who has wandered the terminals of an airport wearing a security badge, you get asked about everything that's gone wrong on someone's travel. That's typically not your job. What you said earlier about being there and being dedicated, you try to help people get them connected in and where they can get help actually. And sometimes that's difficult, depending
Yeah.
on the airline or what happened. You know, let's say it's even as something as simple as they lost something, right? If you're good at your job, you'll at least be like, you'll start asking the prodding, is it on the plane? Was it in the terminal? Was it at the
Yeah.
checkpoint? Because otherwise, if you're like, I don't know, call TSA, call the airline and call to whoever. But, someone there to be kind of that voice for everything
Yeah.
on the end
I was
user, it's not bad.
I was asked a question at an industry event not long ago, and the question was, what should the future of aviation look like? And I made 4 points. I said safe, reliable, affordable, and traveler perspectives included. And I said, I like it. I like it. And I said, that's what we're working towards.
That's great. No, that's a beautiful message. And again, needed because I do think it's lost. I mean, the reality behind air travel is it's the fastest way to get from point A to point B, right? And so, I often talk about this with people because there are segments within our population. It's like, well, you have no choice, which is true in some areas, right? And especially in our country, your choice if you want to get there quickly is to travel. Some of the airports that I've worked at, they may have one or two airlines. So again, you don't have much option there as well. So I do love that. It is a tough industry. I think of Richard Branson when he said, if you want to be a millionaire in aviation, start as a billionaire. It is a difficult industry. It's an expensive industry. But some of the comments that you made, which I think are peeling back on your vision and your mission statements, is the edification to people as well to understand that side of it. And I love that that's your perspective because you can help people out, but you can help them out tremendously by just understanding their perspective, but applying some of the inside knowledge you have as to why it's not just no, no, no. Because you hear that so often and it frustrates travelers, right? They get the no, 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 and people
Yeah.
don't explain it. You're explaining it, and that goes so far, even if it's not
Yeah.
the answer they want to hear.
Strengthening the role of traveler voices in the future of aviation. That's our tag.
Well, that's beautiful.
And we're
Jennifer's,
sticking to it.
well, that's a good message to end on. Is there anything I didn't ask you across everything we talked about today? I want to be mindful of your time.
No, I appreciate all of this. This is a great thing. And by the way, I need to purchase one of your stickers.
You're not going to purchase one.
You're pointing. Your branding is on point. I love it.
I will send you one. As a matter of fact, if I get it tomorrow, I have new challenge coins coming in. Once we're off, if you give me the address for where to send it to you, I'll send it over to you free of charge.
Okay, well, in exchange, we have lapel pins coming in.
Ooh,
Very nice ones, by the way.
nice.
And we will send you one as well.
Oh, I love that. And I will give a shout out to you or anybody listening, but since with you and your husband, Kyle, right? Kyle?
Yes.
Yes, Kyle and your daughter and your son. We're the first airport in Chicago Executive Airport to turn 100 years old. We're in our 100 year right now. Which also too, American and United are 100 years in 2026 as well. But we have a big event on June 27th. So you sound like you're both aviation geeks, but NBAA, NADA, AOPA, they're all will be here. It's June 27th. It's a Saturday before the 4th of July. We have fireworks, we have food trucks, we have airplanes, B-25, Ford Tri-Motor, L-39s. I think you guys would have fun. So
Okay.
you
I'm
should
gonna put this on my calendar.
put it on the calendar and let me know you're coming this way. But Jennifer, thank you so much for taking some time with me today and help me understand because I'll be the first to admit I was a little off when I first heard of it, and I should have done a little more research because I love what you're doing over there.
Okay, I appreciate your time and thank you for giving me this platform to share the story.
Thank you, Jennifer. Well, that was a great interview we had with Jennifer. Learned so much about advocacy and ways that we can advocate for not only ourselves in the industry, but for our fellow travelers. So thank you so much to Jennifer for coming along and being on this interview with us. If you would like to be on one of our interviews, you can reach out to me at dapodcast85@gmail.com. We have some more amazing stuff, more interviews coming up, vlogging stuff coming up. Waco, Waco, Texas. I'm gonna have to get it right. They're gonna hit me with a wet noodle over there. Waco. But we have more Waco stuff coming up. But thank you so much for, as always, coming along with us on this journey. Until next time, my friends, we'll see you down the runway.